Merry Meet, and welcome once again to another episode of the Heart of the Witch's Path podcast. I'm your co-host, Helen.
And I'm Kathy.
And today we're coming to you with episode 106 of our podcast.
Yay.
I can't believe it. Every time we sit down to do one of these, I get excited that we're
continuing,
that we're doing this, that
consistently,
that it's a thing. It's nice because it gives Kathy and I the opportunity to sit down and to come up with the episodes, like what are we going to talk about? And I feel that like even today we were doing some pre-work before recording and saying, okay, what's the next few going to be like? So I feel like we're planning more. We're getting into some meat of some things and stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited.
Me too.
About what we're doing. So if you're a listener, we thank you for your continued
patronage,
listening to us two old witches.
Speak for yourself.
Ramble on about topics that are important to us. Today, we wanted to talk about something
that is very important.
Yes.
And is not really spoken of enough. Our topic is ritual etiquette.
And preparation. And a lot of people go into ritual not really knowing what the etiquette is and make some, newbie mistakes. And this topic just kind of covers do's and don'ts. We did pull a list off the internet from where the hell moonpathcups.org, and that's cups with 2 U's. If I remember, I'll put it in the.
We'll make sure she puts it in the notes.
Box.
I wanna preface our going over this list by saying that we don't necessarily agree with everything on that list, but we will put our addendums on there.
Yeah. I mean, I think every group,
right,
has their own thing, but I think that the list that they had was pretty good, pretty inclusive of things, and
kind of amusing. They did it tongue in cheek.
Yeah, they did add some funnies in there, so that's cool. But one thing that they really didn't prepare or didn't talk about was preparation. So we prepared a small list. It's not, huge or anything like that. But before we get into the meat of this episode.
Where's the beef?
Let's talk about the correspondence.
The correspondence. Because we're talking about ritual, we actually decided to do 4 correspondences. And we're going to keep it brief just because there's a lot to it. I mean, we could go... In fact, that's a plan for a future broadcast, is to go into the elements and the correspondences thereof. Mm-hmm. But we're going to keep it brief today.
Yes. So, do you want to start? With...
You start.
Okay, I'll start.
And we'll take turns.
Oh, I love taking turns. It's like sharing.
If you can read my handwriting, it'll be all good.
Yeah, that's why you wanted me to go first. So let's start with the elemental spirit. Let's talk about... we're going to talk... We picked out a few correspondences for each of the 5 elements that we thought were cool. Whatever.
And there's many, many more out there.
Oh, yeah.
Quick Google search or Christopher Penzak's Outer Temple.
Christopher covers all of the elements incredibly well in his Outer Temple of Witchcraft book, which is his second level in his mystery school. And he takes 3 chapters to cover all of this stuff.
6 through 8, if you're interested.
Chapters 6 through 8, if you're interested. So that's where we pulled some of this information, and it's his work. I think you know that I especially am a fan of Christopher. Sidebar note, because I don't think our listeners are aware. Let's just go there. I'm pretty excited because I'm on my last lesson. I'm a student of Christopher's, and I'm on my last lesson of year 3 in his Temple of Witchcraft series. And so it's the Shamanic Temple of Witchcraft. This year has been a lot of work, and it's heading up right now. with shadow work and stuff like that, and it's a pretty intensive time, so I'm wrapping that up, and I'm going to say I'm pretty proud of myself. So anyhow...
And you should be.
So anyhow, spirit. Let's talk about spirit. The sex of spirit is androgynous. It is all sexes. The elementals, which are the beings that represent the element, is all angelic and divine beings. The tarot, in the tarot, the major arcana is spirit. For tools, that would be the cauldron and the pentacle, although you'll find that, they can represent other elements as well, as we continue down our list. And if you're familiar with the witch's pyramid, the spirit represents the apex, the top of the pyramid, the culmination of your energy and what you've worked for.
Right. So the east, air is generally in the east.
For us, it's in
the east. For us, it's in the east. Other traditions put it in the south.
Like Christopher, actually.
Right. Air is considered to be male. It corresponds to the swords of the tarot. If you are putting air in the east, if not, then it's the wands.
I think maybe air. I'm confused. I'm not sure. It might be south, because that's Christopher's work. Mm-hmm. Because he puts air in the south.
Right.
So the swords might go with south if it were in the south, but wands if it's in the east. We traditionally put air in the east, and it's with the wands. So the tool then would be with the wand. If you do it the other way, then it would be the athame. And the magical being is the sylph, which is a winged creature. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kind of fairy-like.
It also corresponds to... Where did I put this down? To know on the witch's pyramid.
Ah, yes. Very good. All right, so the next element is fire. And fire is a male influence. Looking at the tarot, we're doing that little flip-flop again. It's wands or swords, depending on where you put that element in your sacred circle. So, again, flip-flopping, it could be the athame, it could be the wand, it could even be a candle.
As far as tools are concerned.
And then the elemental being is the salamander. And if you're doing the witch's wheel, it is to know.
Witch's pyramid.
What did I say?
Wheel.
I've been doing wheel work too much.
Right.
So to will.
So that moves us on to water, which is female and generally in the west. It corresponds to the cups of the tarot. The chalice, bowl, or shell, as far as ritual tools are concerned. The magical being is the undine.
Which are like mermaids and mermen.
And the witch's pyramid is to dare.
Yes. And then finally we have earth. And of course earth is a female. It corresponds with the suit pentacles in the tarot deck. As far as tools, it's stone, crystal, salt, pentacle. And the elemental being is the gnomes and dwarves. And then for the witch's pyramid, it is to be silent. So,
there we go.
There's our correspondence work. If you haven't already or don't or whatever, I highly recommend, if you are a person who meditates, visit the elemental realms. Visit the east. Go to the gateway. When we cast a sacred circle, we call to the guardians of the watchtowers of the whatever element that we are at. And you can travel, journey, whatever, through meditation to those places. Go there. visit with a spirit from that place. Get a sense for what they are. Deepen your relationship with the elementals. You will not be sorry. Okay?
There are also some exercises in Deborah Lipp's book, The Way of Four, that talks about how to get more in touch with the elements. But again, this is a topic for another podcast.
Right. So let's move on to what we're here for today. Today we're talking about etiquette and preparation for ritual.
Right.
Kathy, what do you do to prepare for ritual?
Well, generally I clean my house because it's here. Which is really part of the clearing away and also ritual. Well, I don't bathe my house, but when I shower prior to ritual, I make sure that I do that in such a mind space where I'm cleansing myself and preparing to do this work. It's important that you, even if you just wash your hands, that you come to ritual clean and ready to work.
In the past, we have made soaps. I used to be involved in Native American spiritualism, and if you know anything about that, you'll know that there are 4 herbs, plants, trees, whatever you want to, because it's a little bit of everything, 4 plants that are sacred to the Native people. Cedar, sweetgrass, tobacco, and sage. And so I had an oil that was 2 of those elements, and I had the dried ingredients for the other 2, and so I actually made ritual cleansing bars of soap. And I need to do that again because it's been a while since we've had those. But a lot of people will have special soaps that they bathe with that day.
Whatever it takes to get you into that space.
And it doesn't have to be those 4. You know, what speaks to you as being sacred? I mean, it could be rose, it could be patchouli, it could be ylang ylang, it could be anything.
It could be dial soap, whatever gets you into that space.
It could be the way that you bathe. You know, you have a specific thing. But one thing that I try to establish during the bathing of that day and then going through the rest of that day leading up to ritual is I try to hold a mindset of sacredness. We are going to hold circle that day. We are going to cast circle. We're going to have a ritual. We're going to set up this time that is not a time in a place that is not a place. And so I try to think about that throughout the day. I mean, and sometimes you might be rushing around, you know, preparing your dish for feast and stuff like that. But I mean, I try to hold that mindset that we're doing this today. You know, so that I think is important.
Right. It's also important just prior to ritual that you ground and center to make sure that you're pushing away from you all those worries and cares about rushing around and getting ready, because this is a time without a time and a place without a place, and you need to be in that mindset that this is something else.
Right.
So you need to get rid of all of that stuff, and the ritual bathing is part of it, but grounding and centering is another part of it.
And we usually do that as a coven now.
We do.
We've started where we ground and center together.
Right.
And I like that. I think that's great. I think it works really well. Great. The last thing for preparation, because I think we do this before circle. So we prepare sacred space. We actually we face each of the quarters and we call to spirit guides and stuff like that and ask them to help us clear out that which is not needed, banish it away, and invoke all that is for our highest good. Right,
and you can do that with words, or you can do that with smudging. A lot of covens do it with a broom to clear out that space. Prior to ritual, we also set up the space. We put our quarter candles out. If we're doing ritual outside, we make sure that everything is set up out there with the quarter candles and the altar cloth and everything on the altar, and make sure that it's all ready to go so that when we get ready to call circle, then we can just start calling circle.
Right. So that's preparation. Now, let's get into etiquette. So we've got this list that we found on the internet. And again, like Kathy said, you could do a Google search.
Which is what we did.
And come up with a list. It's super simple. But these guys at moonpathcups.org.
That's cups with 2 U's.
Right. They had this great list, so thanks to them. We want to give them props for having it out there, and we're giving them total credit for it.
Oh, I also want to add that I did not check out the rest of this website at all, so I don't know anything about these people. Right. I just thought this list was cool.
Yeah, this list was pretty comprehensive. So, you want to read the first one?
Sure. Well, we kind of already covered that. In ritual, we're going into this as a sacred space, so we have to have that kind of a mindset. And the list that they have says, in ritual, we suspend disbelief as in a play. Casting the circle is an enacted meditation. And I believe that in a sense they're correct because, okay, as much as we would like to have colors shooting from our fingertips and this watery bubble come up around us, we all know that doesn't happen in real life. So you have to visualize that as you're doing ritual. You have to suspend your disbelief and say, yes, there is a bubble coming around us, because you can feel it when you get practiced enough.
Right.
But you can't see it.
Right.
Well, probably some people can see it. Okay, I can't see it. I feel it.
Right, I feel it.
Right.
I mean, I see it internally, but I don't see it with my eyes open, kind of a thing.
Right.
My psychic ability doesn't run that way.
Right.
So
I feel it. I know it's there. So you have to go into ritual with the expectation that you're not going to see the sparkles flying from fingertips, but you will feel it and you will know it's there.
Right.
And you have to suspend disbelief and know that this is what's going to happen.
And that's what manipulating energy means.
Okay. We have some noises going on from some stuff on the table. I'm trying not to shake the table, but...
Alright. So, arrive on time.
That's a biggie.
That's a biggie. Be there on time. Especially if you're visiting. If you're going to some other group's ritual...
Be early.
Yeah.
Not too early, an hour's too early, but 20 minutes early?
Right.
Definitely.
Because that way you can help with setup and stuff like that.
If they want you.
Like my band teacher always said in high school, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Right.
So, scope it out, all that kind of stuff. It's good to be early.
Be on time.
Next.
When invited to attend a private ritual, it is not okay to bring along an uninvited person. And
true that.
Actually, I think that is true if you're in a coven that you've been with for years. Don't ever bring someone if you haven't cleared it with everyone else first. Because there are some people, there are some people that I would not want to cast a circle with. And if somebody showed up with one of those people to a ritual without me expecting it, man, I just don't know. I couldn't walk out because it's my house, but it would be very difficult to deal with.
It's always good. I think a different situation would be, we're going to refer to them as baby witches. We've had some baby witches that have studied and celebrated some circles with us, and they now live in different states and stuff like that. So if it so happened that one of them came back unexpectedly and I was talking to them and, they happened to be available to come to ritual, they've been to ritual.
Yeah, that's
and
one thing.
I think that everybody would be okay if I didn't clear it with them first.
Right.
If it's somebody that celebrated with you before...
Right.
That might be
people are okay with.
Right.
There's also another setting where it might be applicable that you could bring someone to, and that would be like the group Sacred Birch that we've done ritual with before, where they had just an open ritual. Anybody who comes can come. Right. That's totally different. In a situation like that, it's cool to bring someone else as long as you know that they're not going to disrupt. The thing is, if you bring someone, you're responsible for them, and you have to keep that in mind.
Right, definitely. All right, so the next thing that Moonpath suggests is bringing your own cup for use during cakes and ale. Now, cakes and ale isn't necessarily something that we do with our coven, and that's simply because we always feast afterward.
Right.
So that is our cake and ale.
And when there are a few Sabbats that we do cake and ale during ritual, and we always have the disposable cups for those instances.
But that's something that we know about. But if you're
Right.
going someplace and you don't know, like if you're going to a ritual and you don't know what it's going to be like, then it might not be a bad idea
Right.
if you have something to take it with you.
Or ask if you should.
Right. It's kind of a good suggestion, something I never thought about.
Right.
So
the next suggestion is the athame, the ceremonial knife, is optional, which is true in any magical practice.
and I would like to add the wand, too, because some people use a wand
Yes.
instead of an athame.
Yes, tools are always optional, unless it's specified in the ritual that you need it. Because you can always use your fingers or your hand to direct power. You don't have to have the tool to do it. But if they expect you to bring one, our initiation ceremony requests that you bring one. So if it's not required, you don't have to have it.
Right, so if you happen to forget it at home,
It's not a big deal.
Or if you happen to be like me and you're without an athame right now.
Well, we have a coven one right now. So,
So, all right, so the next one is a circle is a sacred religious event. Everyone participates. This is not a spectator sport.
now that's not saying that everybody's got to jump around and run around and scream, and everybody's got to call a quarter, and everybody's got to do this, but
Yeah, I would say I don't necessarily agree with this.
I think that everybody needs to put energy into the ritual,
Right.
and I think that that's the spirit of that particular bullet point.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to read it, because I think that there is definitely something to be said to going to a ritual and not being one. I like to experience a ritual sometimes, even at home in our own ritual. It's kind of nice that when we have enough people there that I don't necessarily have to call a quarter or have to do anything, because you can experience the ritual. I can remember going to ritual with the Dianic group that we studied with, and they oftentimes had someone that would invoke the goddess, and you could go to a place. This was like when they had a lot of room and stuff like that.
Right.
So they had a separate space set up for this person who was the goddess for that particular Sabbath. And you would go there and she would channel a message for you from the goddess. And I thought that was some pretty powerful stuff. So it's okay to be a spectator, but I think that energetically you still have to be present.
Right. You still have to be present and not checking your, Facebook or your email.
Right.
Be in the ritual. This is a sacred thing. Be in it.
I think that we don't allow any tech in circle, and it's nothing that
We've never had to enforce it.
Yeah, we've never had to say anything
No.
about. The only reason that I would have my phone in circle is to use it to take pictures.
Yeah. Which is why I use mine.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which we'll talk about more.
Right.
More later. So, is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. Dress in either robes or comfortable clothes. Your body should be clean and your mind clear. Bare feet bring you closer to the earth. Save sky-clad for private occasions.
I personally do not know anybody who practices skyclad.
Well, not in a group setting.
Not in a group setting, right?
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No, there's not.
I mean, I think Crystal may have at one point in her.
Okay, but she
history.
doesn't now, right?
Not to hand out secrets. Sorry, Crystal. All right, but I mean, I think that skyclad really kind of lends itself to the older, like Buckland, Gardnerian,
right?
Alexandrian, which I don't know anybody, but someone who came from like a traditional 13-member coven, where everybody was working their way up through through their school of mystery so that they can go out and start their own coven. I think that's where some of that stuff might still live. I don't know anybody like that.
And I'm sure there are people who practice their personal practice skyclad.
But yeah, so we don't do it, but and we're actually in the middle of making ritual garb. So, it's always good to have that. Helps put you in the mindset, and that's why that's there.
It's not necessary, but it's nice.
Your turn.
A circle is a time of reverence, not a social hour.
I think that's pretty.
It is true. I mean, you shouldn't be talking about what happened at work yesterday in circle. It's not to say you should never speak, because there is a time for. I mean, we joke around in a circle and we talk, but we don't ever. It's not a social hour. We don't. We save that for after ritual.
Enter the circle and proceed clockwise as far as possible. When you stop, ground and center yourself, lower your head, and focus your thoughts inward for a while.
Well, I think that we've already covered grounding and centering, which we always do before
and
ritual.
I think this kind of lends itself to me thinking that maybe this group casts circle and then you enter.
Right.
So
yeah, they might.
I would interpret this as, you enter sacred space, and clockwise is keeping that energy moving.
Which you should always move clockwise during ritual. Unless you're doing a ritual that requires counterclockwise movement.
Right.
Turn off your beeper and cell phone. And I have been guilty of this in the past, not turning off my ringer.
I think we're pretty good about it.
But we are pretty good about it.
Yeah. This list says do not take pictures. And I think for us, we would amend it to have ground rules.
Right.
Or clear.
Absolutely have ground rules, because there are people who are not out and they do not want to be tagged on Facebook in a ritual setting because, well, that kind of outs them. Mm-hmm. And although we don't necessarily see it here, there are still people who are persecuted for their religious beliefs, whether it's when they're getting a divorce and their ex is trying to, get the kids, or somebody gets fired from their job, or, the Girl Scouts don't want you involved because you're pagan or something. Not everybody is out, and you have to respect them. That is like the number one rule. Respect people who don't want to be out.
Right.
So if you're going to take pictures, make sure that you take pictures without that person in it, if they've already spelled out that they don't want to be, outed. Or make sure that you definitely do not post them.
Right. Another important one for me is do not touch other people's altar tools or open their books without first asking permission. This falls back to my theater days. And the big rule was if it's not your prop, don't touch it. Because, someone could have a tool. They might not want you touching their tools. Tools are a sacred thing. And luckily we have coven tools that it's safe for any of us to touch. We're okay with whatever. But you might have somebody that, they don't want you touching this or that.
Because they've made an agreement with some spirit or god or goddess that says that, hey, this is your tool, no one's supposed to touch it, or no one's supposed to touch it if they've done this.
Right.
So just don't touch without asking.
It's a respect thing.
Right.
So
you are in the goddesses and God's presence in perfect love and perfect trust. Enjoy, be reverent and joyful, and be full of hope and wonder at all there can be. And that's part of it's not a social hour too. This is ritual. Stay in that ritual space. Be there.
Mm-hmm. The best protection when learning is a sense of humor.
Oh God, we have such a sense of humor. We cannot get through a ritual without laughing.
Yes.
You will likely be told who to watch and how to make yourself comfortable. We don't necessarily do that in our rituals just because, we're a small coven, and we don't get outsiders a lot of times, but, we have a chair to sit if you can't stand through the ritual, and pretty much we know who's going to do what at the start of ritual. Mm-hmm. And it's important to let everybody know that that's going on.
Mm-hmm. This one's kind of a safety thing. There's usually an open flame in circle.
Or more than one.
Yeah, be aware so you don't catch yourself or anyone else on fire.
And if someone else gets caught on fire, it is not a part of ritual. Make sure you put them out.
Right.
A chant may be used to raise power. Now this list says when the chanting is done, everyone touches the ground to drain off excess energy. We've never done that in ritual. We've used chants from time to time, but we generally try to keep that power going to release at the end of circle.
During cakes and ale, do not eat everything you are given. There might be a libation dish into which you're expected to return a small offering back to the goddess and god. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. Well, we generally have a plate that that we have for the fairies and the little ones and the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Stay till circle is opened. Do not crash out early. Now, generally they tell you don't move outside a circle, inside a circle, unless it's been cut open, unless you're, children and dogs, animals, can move through without impunity. We add on men, or at least spouses. My husband is horrible about trying to get in and out of circles, so we just kind of pretend that he's a little boy, and we energetically let that circle let him in and out, because he just doesn't know boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Afterwards, ask questions about the meaning of what you saw and did. I don't necessarily agree with this, and I oftentimes encourage someone, if you have a question, ask.
Right.
We don't have big circles. We don't, have 50 people or 20 people or anything like that. So I would much rather have you ask about something right there so that you understand it there, because understanding that could mean getting the lesson or the experience that you're supposed to out of this experience. And if you don't know what it is, then ask.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, here's the big one. Later, do not tell outsiders who else was at the circle. Do not greet publicly someone you see again with reference to the circle gathering. Respect their privacy. Persecution really does happen. So it's okay to say hi to the person on the street, but don't say, hey, it was so good to see you at the pagan festival last week.
Right.
Because...
And that just falls back onto there are some people that aren't out, and it's not your job to out them.
It is not.
You're on your path, you do your thing.
Right. It's different if you know this person is an out person, because I am totally out. Absolutely, positively, totally out to everyone except my dad, and since he has Alzheimer's, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
We were in the store the other day, and my mother announced to everyone in the store that I was a witch. And I didn't have a problem with it. The person standing in line behind my mother apparently did, because she gave me some really nice looks. Imagine if I had known that person, and, maybe my kids went to school with her kids, and I wasn't out, and now all of a sudden I am. It can cause a lot of problems, so just be wary and be aware of what your words can do.
Right. And that's the list. I think that it's pretty sound. I would encourage you that if you want to share something that maybe should have been on the list, you think, and wasn't, make a comment. Let us know. And
absolutely. I mean, we've covered what we think is everything, but
we could have forgotten something.
The big thing is, if you're in a group of people that you have not done ritual with before, make sure that you get their rules before you start.
Yes.
That's the big thing. Communication.
Right. Very good. All right. Well, I think that's it.
Well, our next two...
Oh, right.
Our next two podcasts, we have... I know we're running long. I know we are. It's okay. People love to hear us talk. So we have decided that we're going to try to schedule out our next two podcasts when we do these. So next week, Helen and I next time, 2 weeks. Helen and I have started going through a rune study program from Diana L. Paxton's book, Taking Up the Runes, which has been recommended in every single rune class I've ever taken. And this is a group rune study that Helen and I are going to be recording our discussions on them.
So that should be interesting. And then, so that'll be episode 107, and then 108, we're going to talk about Beltane.
Yay!
So there you have what we're going to be dealing with. So please tune in, please comment, please let us know what you think. Please let us know if there's something you want us to talk about that we haven't yet. And it may be on our list, it may not be on our list.
Right.
But we encourage comments, queries, ponderings, whatever. Let us know that you're listening. Let us know that you're there. So that's it for our time together today. Thank you once again for taking the time to walk the path for a little while with us. And until next time, blessed be.
Blessed be.